Cool. We are live. Week 4, calculated fields. So before we hit record, everyone went through and did their storytelling. Actually, probably a good thing I wasn't recording because I was showing real live company data, which I'm sure a builder trend would not be happy about being published to YouTube. So we went through everyone's kind of publication that we talked about using the charts from last week. And tonight we are going to dive into calculated fields. So real high level, we'll cover kind of 3. I mean, there are literally thousands of different types of calculated fields. I narrowed it down to the 3 I used most, similar to how like week 1, we talked about like bar charts, line charts, scatter plots. I say these are the 3 calculated fields I use about 90% of the time. And then I truly would describe level of detail calculations, or as I'll probably refer to them for the rest of the PowerPoint, LOD calculations. And window functions are, I would describe those as like things that Tableau super users use. And no one really taught them to be great. I had to struggle for a long time to figure them out. So hopefully that we can get a good kind of foundation built with you guys tonight, and you can become super users. So up until this point, we've been really heavily focused around charts and visualizations. So we've covered bar charts, heat maps, scatter plots, tree charts, dual axis charts, all different ways to visualize data. And I think that we've actually covered about all the different chart types that we're going to cover into this course. We'll talk about how to format them differently and how to bring them together and some different things like that. But for the most part, we're pretty solid on visualizations. However, to build those, and you guys actually kind of inadvertently mentioned this a couple times when you're presenting your stuff from this week, you're really only as powerful as the data that you have. A lot of the times the data needs to be cleaned up. A lot of times it's coded weirdly, where like number 1 means something, number 2 means something. So it's not a user-friendly format. A lot of times it has weird column headers. So how do we start cleaning that up and making it in a user-friendly format? Maybe it's missing data that we need. And Tableau, part of the reason why it's so powerful is it has the ability to create calculated fields. So at its core, calculated fields are a way to create data that does not exist in your starting data set. So really powerful. And then I said here, LOD calculations and are basically just calculated fields on steroids. Something I love about Tableau and why I was excited to teach this course from a data scientist perspective is that learning Tableau does a really good job of teaching you how to be a full stack data scientist. So up until this point, we've talked about like joins, which is really data engineering. We've talked about chart types, which is like data analyst, data scientist type stuff. A lot of the calculated fields are going to be more data engineering because you're going to be cleaning data. You're going to be munging it. You're going to be creating data. And then some of the if statements and things like that will actually give you kind of a sneak peek on like the coding software development side of things. So we're going to be, I wouldn't really call this like a survey course where we're covering a little of everything, but I do think the Tableau does a good job of teaching that. So excited to get into it tonight. Similar like we've done the last 2 weeks, I'll go through the kind of the overview of everything that we're going to teach over the next like 20 minutes. We'll take a break, and then the next hour will be kind of hands-on stuff. And then we'll have about a half an hour at the end for questions and things like that. So just jumping right in. Is everyone able to, first of all, see the PowerPoint all right? Like this little thing here, are you able to read the formula that's in there?
Yes.
Cool. I just wanted to, I wanted to put screenshots in PowerPoint as opposed to sharing it on sharing my screen a million times. So to start out with basic arithmetic. So I wanted to talk about the most basic example of a calculated field. And actually, I'm going to eat crow and go back on what I just said. I am going to share my screen in Tableau just to show you how I get to this point. So let me present Tableau public. So this is something that we're all very familiar with seeing up to this point. We have our data, we have our measures or our dimensions over here, we have our measures down here. If we click this cute little arrow right here, it pops up a little drop down here, and we can click create calculated field, and it gives us this box. In this box, we can type all all sorts of different things. We can type the sum of profit, and you can see it turned yellow or orange here, and that's because it's a field over here. The blue is like a little function thing, and then you can click OK. We can title it whatever we want. So when you see screenshots throughout the course or throughout the slides tonight of this white box, basically anything in orange is a field that we already have. And a little fun known fact, you can actually just drag stuff over here as well too, if you don't want to type it out. So that's how you create a calculated field, and we'll get lots and lots and lots and lots of practice to that tonight, I promise. So so all the examples for tonight are from our Superstore data. We have profit that we messed around with a bit. We have sales that we messed around with a bit. But one of the calculations that it doesn't give us is profit margin. So you can see on our rows over here, we have every single order number. You can look at our measure values. We have the sum of profit, so the total profit we had from that order, the sum of sales, so how much the original sale was. But say we want to understand what our profit margin was, because we've seen from some other stuff that sometimes the profit's negative, sometimes we have a ton of profit, not very many sales. So I wanted to start understand where are we really doing well and where aren't we. So I created a calculated field, and it's just as simple as doing profit divided by sales. And then you can see I created that field. I called it profit margin. I brought it over to measure values. And now I have a new column over here that is showing exactly what this formula says, profit divided by sales. And just like that, we created a new data point that did not exist in our regular data that we can now use in visualization. So if we wanted to show a bar chart, most popular categories by profit margin or something like that, we could do that. Now, something that's really, really important to remember is that the way this formula works is on a row by row level. So to maybe like emphasize that a little bit more, because it will start to make sense in a second. Let's create a table real quick. And I want to show you exactly what that formula is doing. So in our data, we have a profit column, right? We have a sales column. What this is doing is every single row showing, so this is 5 and this is 10. It's creating right here 0.5. And then we have 2 and we have 5 here. Oops. 5 here. It's great. So this is essentially making a new column. And there's a new value for every single row in here. So it's not taking all of profit divided by all of sales. It's doing it row by row, which makes sense when we look at this example here, where every single row is a new order. And so every single order has a profit margin. However, where this starts to break down is, say I want to group exactly what I just said. I want to show my profit margins by category. So here I have the sum of profit again, it's 18,000. The sum of sales, 742,000. And my profit margin for some reason is now looking at like 8,000%, which would be an awesome profit margin to have. But if we just do the mental math in our head, we know that it should be 18,000 divided by 742,000. So why is that happening? Right? To use our example that we just looked at, we'll create another little table here. Profit bills. Call it PM for profit margin. Here we had 5, here we had 10. This came in at 0.5 to 5, 4. Right? When I drag sum of profit over, it aggregates this entire column, right? When I drag sum of sales, it aggregates this entire column, which is our sales. When I'm dragging profit margin over, since it's computing it on a row by row basis, it's bringing in, right, this would actually be like 50% as a percentage. This would be 40%. It is showing the sum of our profit margin across all these categories. So it's summing up 50%, 40%. It's not doing this sum of profit divided by this sum of sales to get the category profit margin. Does that make sense how that's work?
It does.
Yeah, I think after a couple more examples, it'll make more sense. Just have to look at it a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Tonight will be full of examples for sure. So say we wanted to actually see what the profit margin for furniture is. The cool thing about calculated fields is you can actually do aggregations inside. So we wanted to show the profit margin for our category. So we could actually say aggregate it and bring in the sum of profit, bring in the sum of sales, and then divide it, right? So instead of doing row by row, we bring in an aggregation that we're very used to working with and do sum. So now we have sum of profit, right, which is this 18,000. We have sum of sales. Originally, we were adding up the sum of the row level profit margins, which is not what we want to do. Now we're saying, whoops, one too many columns, but that's all right. Profits, sales, and now we're saying instead of do the sum of our just profit divided by sales, profit margin, sum that up, we're saying take the sum of profit. So this would give us, right, 7. Let's take the sum of sales. This would give us 15. And I've now gotten to the point where I can't do the mental math, but that would bring in what, like 45 somewhere percent in there. So it's the sum of both, adding those up. So originally where we were getting 82,000 or 8,200 for a profit margin, we're now aggregating it first and then showing the profit margin. So you can do it on a row by row basis, or you can do it on an aggregate basis. Now, if we wanted to remove category and bring in subcategory or region, we can group by and aggregate across any of our measures that we have in there, or any of our dimensions that we have in there, and it will still sum it up and do the division on whatever we're aggregating by. So that's probably the most important thing when trying to understand calculated fields, is it starts on a row by row level. Unless you tell it to aggregate, then you can bring in any dimension you want. Now, just another kind of quick example here. Say I wanted to show our average profit margin per order. So per order across all of our categories. We showed that we could aggregate it in there. We showed that we could do it on a row by row basis. If we wanted to show the average, does anyone have any idea how we would do that?
Wouldn't it just be the sum category divided by the sum profit, and then aggregate it from there?
Yeah, so the sum, so that's a good example. So we could do, you guys are going to get tired of seeing me do these tables, but it makes the sense. Profit, sales, I also refuse to use any other examples because I've got these mental maths down. So I want to show average profit margin per order. We know each row is an order. Before we were showing, right, we have this row by row level here. We were showing the sum of everything. So that didn't make sense. But if I wanted to change that to an average, now that's what I want, because I want the row by row level. So I don't want to aggregate it all up across the entire thing. I want to keep it on a row level and then aggregate just the average instead of the sum. So let me actually pull up Tableau and show you with some real data what I'm talking about. So right here we have our rows. Here's our order numbers. And here's our profits and sales for each. So we created this calculated field called profit margin, which is just profit divided by sales. If we bring that over, right now it's showing, see how it shows sum here, that's fine because it's the sum of the order. So there's nothing else to aggregate. So it's 16%. However, right, when I brought it over here, this is where it's showing that's 8,200 because it's summing up all these different profit margins. However, I want to show the average per order. So in this case, if I just change the sum of the profit margin to an average, now again, it's going across all these rows and showing the average. So in this case, it actually works. So the aggregate across the entire thing, the profit margin here, 2.49%, but the average one per order is 3.88%. Does that make sense? Any questions? I can walk through that again if you guys would like.
That's probably just a rewatch the video kind of thing.
We'll get some hands-on examples too. The important thing that I'm wanting to show here is you can either, you can keep things unaggregated in your calculated field and then aggregate them after, right? We're showing the average of this thing. Or you can aggregate things inside your custom field. And then it will say, instead of sum or average, it'll say AGG, which stands for aggregate. That's just showing that you already aggregated it inside. So the point is that we have options. And once we start doing some examples, I think it'll make more sense. Cool. Now we're going to get into if statements. Anyone in this class ever taken, I know we have a few of you that took SQL. In SQL, they actually use case statements instead of if statements, but they're kind of the same thing. Does anyone have any experience? You can even use if statements in Excel, but any experience using if statements before?
I think we did it briefly when we were learning C#.
Oh, sweet.
But not a lot of detail on it. It was a couple of weeks of that, but it was introduced to us.
Cool. Yeah, we're not going to go heavy into it either. But I will show just real high level because it's basically if statements in some way, shape, or form are part of every single coding language, like I mentioned, even Excel out there because they're so powerful. So I'm going to try to break it down into basically the three things that you have to remember. They're called if statements because you have to start every single statement with the word if. That's what signifies an if statement. Whoops. Well, that's really annoying. But after that, you give your condition. So this is going to be what you want to evaluate as either true or false. Let's make this a nice pretty one. So here we're saying if, and then we're saying subcategories equals tables. This will evaluate every single time to either true or false. Every single row, it's going to walk through and say is subcategories tables, true or false. If it equals tables, then is the next important thing that we have to have in every single one. And then this will be what it returns. We're going to return blue. So if subcategories equals tables, then blue. So this is true or false. This is what we want it to return. Now, if this is false, so if subcategories do not equals tables, then we skip the then equals blue and we go to this else. And else is basically just a catch-all. So else so it returns true. I'm trying to label this so you guys can go through and it'll make sense later without me talking. And then you have to finish every single one with the word end. So for example, Say I was giving a presentation to my company about tables. I wanted to show, here's the sum of sales across all of our subcategories. And I want them to ignore everything else. So I don't want to go through and individually color all these, right? To start out with, Tableau would make this really, really colorful. And I want to focus their attention on tables. So I could write this if statement really quick and say if subcategory equals tables, then blue, else gray. So again, what this is doing is it's creating in our data set a new column, right? So we have subcategory, and then for every single tables, machines, and then I called this tables highlight, right? That's just the name of my calculated field. For every single row, just like we were doing before, is evaluating if subcategory equals tables. In this case, that's true, then blue. So it is creating a new data point that is assigning this row this value. Then it'll go to the next one and say if subcategory equals tables, machines does not equals table. So it'll skip over what happens if true, and it'll go to this else because it's false, and it will return gray. And it will go to the next row, subcategory is not equals tables, else false. So it'll be gray again. And it will do that for every single row. So then once again, I have a new data point that I can use in my data to color my tables to make that one stand out. A lot of times what people will use this for, and I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, is if the data is really, really messy, they can go in there, say I have a user input thing, like people misspell my name all the time. And so Charlie is one way to spell Charlie, or it can be Charley. If I wanted to aggregate my name, but I have two rows spelled two different ways, I could do if name equals Charlie, spelled Charlie, then return Charlie. So then that way you could kind of correct the data. So it's really, really helpful for cleaning data up. Any questions on just kind of real basic if statements here? Cool. The last thing, and again, this is not a coding class, so I'm not going to get into all the intricacies of it, but it is possible to expand if statements to have multiple conditions. So in the last example here, we just had one condition, true or false. If it was true, you returned this. Else, it was false, you returned this, and then you finished it. You can actually create as many different else statements as you want using this term else if. So I'm not going to spend the time to color every single one of these. But basically, if you have this word in there, let's go ahead and start. We'll start at the top. If subcategories equals tables. So if that's true, same thing, you'll return blue. Else, and since I'm putting another if, it basically acts the same way again. So if subcategories equals copiers, then orange. And then if that is false, then I just have an else statement that again is the catch-all, return gray. So now you see for all my tables, I have blue. For all my copiers, I have orange. If I wanted to, I could say else if again right after this and write another if statement, else if again, and another if statement. So if you wanted to correct my name and Ryan's name and Charity's name, you could go through a million different else if statements and build out. So really, really powerful stuff. Okay, and then the last one is date diff. And then we're right at an hour, so we'll take our first break before getting into level of detail stuff. So date diff, I actually showed this in class on Monday when I was trying to make that annoying Gantt chart. But date diff is same thing. It's a function that exists in pretty much every coding language. Same thing. I use it in Excel all the time. Really, really basic function. So this will, much like it sounds like, compute the difference between two dates. So the syntax for it is pretty simple. You just type date diff. The first part needs to be what you want that difference to be shown as. So I could type hour in here, I could type minute in here. I could type months in here. I could type years in here. And then I type the starting date and the ending date. And it will calculate how many days are between those two dates. If I typed hour, it would calculate how many hours were between order date and ship date. And then I am going to do one last table just to really hammer home what's happening here. Right, I need to add I add a row. You give up and do it again. So I have my order date and my ship date. I'm creating a new column, a new calculated field called days to ship. So in here, let's say this is 12, 19, 2022. So December 19th, this is 12, 9, 22. For every single row in here, it is going to say this is 10 days between and return 10. 01, 01, and 05. It would return, okay, this is 4 days. So now, and this is actually something that I think I was trying to show last week, and we didn't have the data to do it. We've created a new data point, days to ship. And so now, say I just wanted to show, let me make this a little bit bigger now. This is the average days to ship by shipping mode. So we have same day, makes sense. It's a little over 0. So there must have been one that slipped in that took a full day. First class is getting there on average a little over 2 days. Second class is getting there on average a little over 3 days. And then standard class is getting there a little over 5 days. So I'm able to aggregate across all my different days, create a new data point, and show something really, really cool that wasn't in the data set before. So the reason, and we're going to pause for a second here and go to our first break, but the reason I wanted to bump this lesson up is because you guys are working with really, really complex data sets. You know how to make really, really cool charts already. Right now, the only thing holding you back is basically if the data doesn't look exactly like you want it to, or doesn't have the data that you want it to. But now you can go in there, you can clean up the data with some if statements, you can create new data with some arithmetic functions, you can create new calculated fields based on date diff, things like that. Basically, if there's anything that you think you should be able to do in Tableau, there is probably a function out there that has it. At the end of the presentation, when I send the slide deck out tonight, I link to a page in the Tableau Help Center that actually has like all 100 or 200 different functions that you can use in Tableau. So by no means do you need to learn them all. I have to look up stuff all the time. But if you ever think to yourself, man, it'd be nice if I had this data point, there's probably a way you can come up with it. So any questions on those first 3 kind of calculated fields I showed you before we take our first break? Cool. Well, thanks for hanging with me through that first section. I know it was a little bit heavy. Let's come back. I want to give you guys, we'll go 10 minutes. Let's come back at 7:15. Actually, you guys care? I'm in Vegas and I wouldn't mind going out to dinner tonight. Let's come back at 7:10. 6 minutes long enough?
Yep.
Cool. And I promise we'll get some hands-on examples in this next section. So see you guys in a bit. All right, 7:10. Give everyone a couple more moments just to make sure everyone gets back. I'll remove the sweet little banner across the bottom, which I think is my favorite part about StreamYard. Cool. So I think instead of going straight into the level of detail in window calc, I want to give you guys an opportunity to make some of those calculated fields we just went through. So I'm actually going to close out of Tableau Public and start from scratch. And we'll do just like we normally do, where I go through one and then give you guys a chance. All right. So same old. Excel, Superstore data, orders, and we'll go to sheet 1. And I think the very first thing that we covered was just basic arithmetic. So yeah, let's just we'll keep doing the profit margin. I think that was a pretty good one. So we are going to bring row ID over on rows. So it gives us basically a unique value for every single one. And then we'll bring order ID over here. So we have an order on each row. And then we'll bring sales and profits. And then just to make things really easy to read, we're going to go ahead and just make that a table. So, and I suppose we may as well, while we're at it, go ahead and make these currency. We're going to get rid of our decimal places just to make it a little cleaner. So I already did profit sales. Number format, currency, get rid of the decimal places. Cool. So this is what we have so far. We are going to create our first calculated field. So we're going to hit this arrow right up here, create calculated field. We are going to call this profit. It doesn't need to be so aggressive. Profit margin. We are just going to do profit. Whoops. Divided by sales. It'll pop up if there is an error. It would show in red down here, but it says this calculation invalid. We'll hit OK. We're going to bring profit margin over here. And then notice how it's zeros across the board. There's a 1 there. That's because this is a percentage. It's showing as a number. So we're going to go to profit margin, hit our default properties, number format, change percentage. Let's keep it at 2 decimal places, hit OK. And just like that, we have created our first calculated field. So I'll pause there for a second, give everyone a chance to open up Tableau Public, pull those things in. And let's go ahead and create our first calculated field. All as kind of like we did on Monday, if you guys would be so kind to give me a shout when you have it, just so I can kind of gauge where you guys are at. And always let me know if you have any questions or run into any issues.
Hey, Charlie.
Yes.
Could you repeat how to get that calculated field open again?
Yeah. So at the very top here, right next to your search bar, there's this little tiny arrow. You can click that, and then there's a pop-up that shows create calculated field, and that gives you your text editor to type.
Okay.
Anyone running into any issues?
Can you do your formula again? I'm trying to remember how you did that.
Yeah, no problem. So if you ever want to get back to your formula, you just hover over the calculated field you created, hit this little down arrow, and then click edit, and I'll pop that back up.
So I ran into the same problem as you helped me fix the other day, and unfortunately it's polluted my mind here, where I have the ABC in the values field, or in the data fields.
Gotcha. Do you mind, can you share your screen real quick? All right. Oh yeah, there you go. So let's see. Yeah, so the little where you have, if you drag that green pill that says measure values, if you just drag that over text, or you can click right there where you were, the three dots, that works. Yep. There you go.
That's what it was. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, the little icon right beside what it was, it had those three dots, which meant it was a detail, which we've talked before means that it's technically in your view but not showing. It's just a detail. We just wanted to change that to a label so that is what pops up. Oops. Gosh dang it.
Thanks.
Yep. Anyone get it yet?
Almost, I think.
I think I have it, but I don't know why mine is showing zeros and -2s and -1s.
Yep. Yeah. So all you have to do is just go over to profit margin
Oh, okay.
and click default properties number format, and then just make sure it's showing as a percentage.
Oh, okay.
Do you care the measure values are different? So like there's this profit, sales, and profit margin. For some reason I can't, and it's like profit margin and then sales. But
Yep.
I've
No,
done
that doesn't matter. If you ever do want to change them around, it basically goes based on whatever you order, you have them on the measure value. So if I were to drag profit margin down to the bottom, or profit over the bottom, you'd see it puts it over here on the right.
Okay.
If I wanted that in the middle, I could change it there. So no, it doesn't matter at all. But if you did want to switch them around, that's how you do it.
Thanks.
Yep.
I may have the same thing going on that Anna had. Like, I think I'm doing it right, but I have some negatives where you have positives.
Gotcha. So like up here, do you have the same numbers? Do you have 42 and 262?
Yeah, but line 4 says -383.
Yep, that's what I have too. It's just I have mine in a currency, so it puts the little parentheses around it instead of showing the negative sign.
Okay, and then I think I missed the filter that you put on the measure names.
Oh, I think that I think that just populates automatically.
Yeah, mine's isn't there.
Are you only showing these three things, or do you have a lot in there?
I have a lot. I
Yeah.
have count, discount, profit,
Yeah.
profit.
So if you measure names should be right at the bottom of your
Uh-huh.
thing. If you drag that up to filters,
Yep.
and then basically, if that's not on there, it'll show all of your measures in your view. So if I clicked apply there, I think that's what you would have right here.
Okay.
And we just want to show, let's see, profit, sales, and profit margin.
Profit, sales, profit margin. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Profit margin. Okay, and then what did y'all do to get the actual percentage? Is that when I go into the format?
You'll actually click on your profit margin, hit default properties, number format,
Yep.
and then click on percentage. It's the
Percentage. Okay. Yep. I remember you teaching us that. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else still caught up? I want to make sure we all get this one before I move forward.
On the profit and sales, I am doing the currency, and instead of $42, it's like 41 and some change, like 91 cents.
Yep.
Do you-
All I did to make that's totally fine. If you wanted to, you could go to currency custom instead of currency standard. And that will allow you to show how many decimal places you want. So if I had 2 in there, whoops, I clicked on sales, but it shows 261.96. I was just rounding it up. So default properties, number format, custom, and then I just changed that to 0 just to make it look a little cleaner. But if you want to be exact and have some decimals in there, that's totally fine.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Cool. So this all makes sense. We're in a table. We created the calculated field. We have this profit margin. This is a data viz class though. So let's say we wanted to see, and this is a really, really, really great real world example of if I just showed sales or I just showed profit, that doesn't really tell the whole story. So I wouldn't be doing my job as a data scientist or a data visualization specialist if I just went with one of those. Say we want to show as a company, how's our profit margin doing over time? So we can use a line chart for that. Let's bring order date over here and let's show that as months. And then let's bring our profit margin that we just created up to rows. And we get this chart, right? Now, again, and we walked through this in example, these percentages don't really make sense. It'd be great if they did, but I can almost guarantee we're not getting over, 500% profit margin. So why is that happening, right? We're looking at the sum of our profit margin value. So we're summing up every single one of these and we're grouping them by, I can go ahead and bring this in, month, year. So for everything that's November 2019, it's summing all of those up, which is not what we want, right? We want the sum of all the profits, right? We're showing sum of profits here. We want the sum of all the sales, and we want to create our new profit margin. So over here, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to create a new calculated field. So we click this button again. We're going to click create calculated field. And let's just call this aggregated. Gosh, I'm always in caps lock. Aggregated profit margin. Now, what do we want? We want the sum of all the sales. Or I guess we want the sum of all the profits. divided by the sum of the sales. So we're going to be grouping by the month, right? So we're going to sum all the profits. We're going to divide. We're going to sum all the sales. And we're going to get what our profit margin was for that month across all of our aggregated orders. So we have this new custom field now. We're going to drag this over and just drag it on top of that to replace it. And now it's starting to make a little more sense. So again, aggregated profit margin, let's change that just like we did previously. Number format, percentage. Now it's showing as a percent. And now you can see our profit margin is actually held pretty steady, right around, call it an average 15%, dating back to 2016. So some months when we don't give out as many discounts or something like that, we have a profit margin of about 27%. I don't know what happened in January 2018. Maybe we were running a New Year's special deal or something, but we were lost money on the aggregate. So in order to explain maybe why that makes sense, let's go ahead and drag sum of profits onto our details. Let's drag sum of sales over onto our details. And let's drag our aggregated profit margin onto details. So now when we hover, we can see our sum, right? Sum of profit, that's what we just dragged there, is $9,732. We have our sum of sales is $38,000. And we know this aggregated profit margin, what is it doing? Well, it's taking the sum of profit, dividing by the sum of sales. So on the back end, all it's doing is dividing that 9,000 number by the 38,000 number, and that's how we get that 25%. Does that make sense on how that's different than if we just had our sum of our first profit margin that we made, where if we sum that up, we get 1,995%.
It makes sense just seeing the steps again. Would probably just have to rewatch the video again, but the steps, just seeing how the steps you took to make sure to, like, especially putting the aggregate on top of the counterpoint,
Yeah,
it's new for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had this one on there. All right, this is the first thing we had. We created this calculated field, which again, I wish it would stay big. Whoops. This is our sum of profit divided by sum of sales. If you wanted to, you could just remove this and drag that one on there. But Tableau does have a really nice feature where if you just want to replace something, you can drag it right on top and it just switches it out. So if I did that really fast, it caught me off guard, I apologize. But yeah, just remove that one, bring aggregate up there, and that's where we're at.
I thought you were combining them somehow by doing that on top.
Oh, nope.
So that's what threw me off. Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because there is actually functionality in Tableau where you can drag stuff on top and combine them, but we won't get into that yet. So no, that's a good call out. And then again, this is a percentage. So if you create this field and it's showing as like ones and zeros and stuff like that, just make sure to go in and change the default properties to a percentage again. I'll leave this formula up for you if anyone needs that again, and then hopefully you can kind of see what the chart looks like in the background just to double check. All right. Anyone get it yet?
I think I got mine.
Very, very cool. If there's anyone that's struggling, that probably means that everyone's struggling. So ask the questions and we can share screens to get it figured out. Anyone else running into anything?
I had a question. So, like, once you've done the field or whatnot, could you edit it?
Yep, absolutely. So in order to edit the field, we just created this one right here. All you have to do is click that little drop down. Then there's an edit button and it pops up.
It goes back. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? I want to make sure that we all get this one because we'll actually use it for our next example.
Trying to think that I only have a year's worth of data on mine.
Yeah. You can change up here in our kind of columns pill. We can click the drop down here and that will give you different options to select by. So if you're just on years right now, that's fine, but you can click into, I was on month.
I'm on month, but it's only showing January through December.
Yeah,
not
so
years.
if you click into it again, and this is part of the Tableau UI that I hate, there's a month option right here that you show the example that just shows May. So that groups by just what it sounds like, just the month name. So there's no years. But you look underneath that, there's another option that says month.
I'm
And
not
this
seeing
one
your
says-
screen. I'm not seeing what's on your screen, so it must be somewhere else.
Oh, whoops. I think there's actually a setting I need to change to see the drop down. But if you click on the that drop down in the columns where it says month, there should be an option.
Oh, I see. I got it now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, totally fine.
Thanks, Ted, because I had the same issue and I didn't know what I was doing. So I appreciate you making that comment.
Yeah, happy to do it. I'm not too proud, I guess.
Okay, and then can you show me again how you set the X and Y at 0 so it doesn't show the negatives? Because mine's looks like yours, but it's showing, the negative 20. It goes from negative 20% up to 25%.
Yeah, I think actually in this case, and that's how mine is too, I think we'd want it to show negative 20
Oh,
to
okay.
25. Since we have some months here that's a little below.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll leave it alone.
Cool. I want to keep trucking here. We'll take another break in about 20 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, I'll stay on over that to ask them. But I want to use this example of the aggregate profit margin that we just made to show how to create a cool little colored bar chart maybe. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate. If you guys haven't found this duplicate button yet, it's a lifesaver. I use it all the time. when I want to save something and start working on something else. So we're going to change this from a line chart to a bar chart. So we can go over to the show me and hit the little bars there if we want, except it swapped my rows and my columns, which I don't want. So let's swap them back. So this is the same exact view that we just had, except bars instead of lines. We could also, if we didn't want to use the show me, over here at our marks, see where it says automatic. You can see it has a little line. We can go down here. We can just click bar, and it does things the same way there. But what we want to do now is we want to highlight these negative values. So we could, one way that we could do is we could bring aggregate profit margin just over our colors, and it gives us, we've done this before, right? Now we can see these that are drop down are red and kind of an orange and a dark blue. But let's say we just want to keep it really, really simple and just be good, bad, red, green. We're going to create a new calculated field. And we're going to call this, we'll keep it simple, call it good. I'm yelling again, good or bad. And we're going to show how to use a calculated field that we just used, which is awesome, or just created. We're going to get into a real basic if statement. So let's do if aggregated profit margin. That's what I'm showing right here. We're going to go is greater than or equal to 0. Then, right, so we have if. That's how we start things off. Here's our condition that we're evaluating. Aggregated profit margin greater than or equal to 0. Then let's say good, right? Because that's a good profit margin. Else, so this would be only when this is false. So this is false when aggregated profit margin is less than 0. We'll call this bad. And we get the calculation is valid. We're going to hit create. So now we have a new field here called good or bad. We're going to drag this onto colors. And now we have all one color when it's greater than or equal to 0, all one color when it's less than. So let's make these some colors that make sense. So remember, we can just click into color, hit edit colors. We're going to make good, green, bad, red. And now we can see our aggregate profit margin over time, except now colored to show red bars when it's in the negative. So now we've used a calculated field with a calculated field. So I'll go ahead and open up this good or bad thing again so you guys can make sure you have your syntax right for your if statement. I'll hover it up here so you can see, where should I hover it? Maybe over here. So you guys can see the example that we're trying to match to. Anyone running into any issues as you hear the cop car drive by my hotel room once again?
I was trying to figure out how you got the key or legend that where the red for bad and green were good.
Yep. So go ahead and just click over here in the marks. If you click color and then edit colors, it will give you you can set either one of these. So if you just click on whichever one you want to set and then click on whatever color you want to set it to. So we clicked on bad and hit red. We clicked on green or good. And clicked,
Okay.
green
Okay.
there. All right, give me a quick shout when you guys get it.
I have it.
Nice, nice.
Good.
I
Anyone
have
getting
it
it?
too.
Nice, very cool. Anyone running into any snags? Cool. Well, this last example here doesn't use any of the calculated fields we just made. So if you were running into any issues, you won't need it for this next step. I was kind of just building this chart to show an example, but I actually, after building it out, I think I like this view a lot more than the one we created. What I didn't like about this, and even Rochelle, you were asking, is like there's negatives in here, but you can't really tell because the zero is right in the middle of the axis. So it kind of looks like it's all over the place, but when you put it this way, you can easily see where the zero axis is. You can see that the majority of the months are in green and positive. The two that do dip below zero, you can easily see where they're at. So just kind of by accident, we all made a view that I think shows what we're trying to show in a much more data viz friendly format. And we did it with a really, really cool custom field. So the very last one that I use a lot is date diff. You can see that we have, I don't know if I've told the whole class, I've told a couple of individually, but the little icons beside each dimension name here shows what type it is. So since it says ABC here, you can see that it's a string. The little globes show that they're a geographical role here. And then the cute little tiny calendars show that they're a date. So you can easily see just by kind of looking over through our columns that we have two dates. We have an order date and we have a ship date. So we are going to create one last calculated field before our last break. And we're going to call this days to ship. And we are just going to type in, whoops, not that, date diff. And the really, really nice thing about Tableau is if you tab over there, it tells you everything that you need inside your parentheses. So you can see right now it's saying we need a date part. That's just day, hour, month, what part, what date do we want? So we want, I think in the example we showed days. And once I hit the comma, you can see that in our little example, the start date is now bolded. So when is the first date that happens? Well, they order it first. So we have the order date, and we hit comma, and now you can see the end date is bolded. So we are going to type in ship date. And I lied. Days, we don't want it to be plural. The date part is just day. But you can see we also type in hour. We could type in month. But knowing our data, they have the same day, they have standards. So I think day makes sense. So date diff, day, order date, ship date, hit OK. And now down in our measures, we have a new column called days to ship. And I think the example that I use, just because it makes the most sense, was ship mode. So if we drag that over to our rows, we can see that we have first class, same day, second class, standard class. Now, if we just bring days to ship over, it's showing the sum for each one of these, which doesn't really make sense. We want to know the average. So we click on sum, we go down to the measure where it says sum, and we just change that to average. So I don't know if we've, I think we've shown how to do that before. There's all sorts of different measures that you can aggregate sum, measure, or you guys aren't able to see my drop downs. I'm gonna have to figure out how to fix that, but click on this arrow, hit measure, and then hit average. And then if we want to maybe clean it up a little bit, let's sort it. And that makes sense. We have same day. On average, it takes less than a day. That makes sense. First class is about 2 days. Second class is about 3 days. Standard class is about 5 days. So I will.
Can you just go back to the calculation and kind of explain that, how you wrote that code a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go to my days to ship and I'll click edit. So date diff, anything that's kind of like colored in blue here, that just lets you know that it's a function. So it's built in date diff. The cool thing is once I start typing, it highlights which part I need. So I'm just going to start with saying I want to know the days. So I want it to break it up into days. Then the start date is the first date that happens. So we know you order something, then it gets shipped. So we'll type in order date, and then we'll type in ship date. So what this says is it's basically going to take the number of days between order date and ship date. And then if I had my PowerPoint back open and I made my ugly little table again, you'd see for every single row, it would return the number of days between those two. And the nice thing about Tableau is it actually pops up and it gives you a little explanation over here.
Mm-hmm.
It returns the difference between two dates, where start date is subtracted from end date, blah, blah, blah. It gives you a little example. So,
and then I know we didn't use that, but when would you use like start of week? Would that be if you had it like separated by weeks 1 through whatever?
yeah. So, yeah, anything that's in square brackets here just means that it's optional. I'm going to be fully transparent. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I've never used the start a date parameter there.
Okay.
So while you guys are working on building this out, I'll actually look up and see what that does. Okay, so the start of week, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you guys, much like me in my past 5 years, will never use this. But basically, it's just saying what you want to denote as the start of every week. So 99% of people that read calendars consider Sunday the start of the week. So if I were to say the only time this would really, so Sunday is the default, so you don't need to type in that. I don't know why you'd ever change it to like Wednesday or something. But say I wanted to know the number of weeks between two dates. If one of the dates was on like a Saturday and the next date was on like a Wednesday, since Sunday across to Sunday, we'd say that's the next week, 1 week apart. We could say for some unknown reason that the start of the week was, I'll say Thursday. So then if one happened on Saturday and one happened on Wednesday, we would say that that's the same week because the week starts over on Thursday. So if you're confused by that, like I am, just forget that you saw it and never use it. But that's what that parameter is saying. But yeah, totally optional. You don't have to type it in. It defaults to Sunday, just like every other calendar.
Charlie, I had a question. The previous formula that we had, I believe it had like an end, like the word end to fulfill the statement or of the formula. But on this one, it doesn't have that. So is there certain ones that use the word end on ones and not on others?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So the only time you'll need to use the end is when you're typing an if statement. And the reason that you have the if statement in there, where's the one that we just created, good or bad? We'll edit that. Is because you can have, like I talked about in the PowerPoint, we didn't cover it here, but if I wanted to, let's just say we're going to change this to, if this is greater than 0, then good. I could do else. Else if this equals 0 and medium, right? And I could create as many else if statements as I wanted. Let's say if this is greater than, less than 0, let's go. Well, this is kind of a hard example. We could go greater than like 100, and we could say really good. And we could basically just do an infinite amount of these else ifs with various different things. And then we end things with an else. So basically the end statement in our if just basically lets it know this is the start. We go through a million, but when we get to end, that's the end of it. So the only time you'll need end at the end is when you're using an if statement. Anyone running into any issues with the date diff? Okay, I'm going to assume that means everyone has it. So again, we created this new thing. We're showing the average by ship mode, but we could show this for something else too. Something that may be kind of interesting is, are we getting better at like shipping those over time, right? So let's do order date on columns. Again, let's group it by month. And then we're going to go ahead and bring in that days to ship on our rows. Let's change that back to an average. So now we're showing, oh, this is actually kind of cool. The average days to ship by month over time. And you can see that it is actually trending down. So perhaps we're optimizing our logistics and getting better at getting things out on time. But this is like, yeah, if I worked in an e-commerce site or a manufacturing or something like that, logistics, UPS, this would be really, really interesting. I would imagine every month we'd want to see this go down. However, maybe as part of if people are just ordering a lot of first class stuff over time, that could be it. So maybe we drag ship mode back onto here. And now they're all broken out by their various ship modes. It actually looks pretty flat. Maybe first class is getting slightly lower over time, but it's really too noisy to be able to tell. But we don't have to worry about recreating this. I just wanted to show an example of how we could use calculated fields that we made with some of the different chart types that we've learned about in the past. So for the remainder of the course, we'll have data sets we'll make pretty charts, but if we don't have the data we need, we'll create a calculated field and we'll just keep humming. So there's a couple more things I want to cover, but we're right at the hour again. So let's call it another 6-minute break. So let's come back at 8:04, a nice obnoxiously not round number. So let me change this. Any questions before we go on break here? Cool. See you guys in a bit. All right. I was waiting for 8:05, and then I remembered I set the be back time to 8:04 to be annoying. So I'll give you guys a couple moments just to get back situated. And just to be completely transparent, I did switch from my Celsius to a high noon. So we're going to try to wrap up in the next half an hour here before I head out to dinner. So the last couple things that I want to show you guys are the level of detail calculations and the window calculations. I do just want to pause and let me get rid of this ticker. Reassure you guys that what we're learning tonight is really, really hard stuff. So if you are struggling with it, I promise that you are not alone. It took me 5 years to learn all this stuff. And that's what this class is for. We're trying to throw a lot at you in a really, really short amount of time. 4 weeks is kind of insane to get through all the stuff that we're getting through. But I'm really, really proud of the progress that we're making, and just want to reassure you guys that this is hard stuff. So if you do have questions, again, I'll have office hours, but just keep practicing. And this is why data scientists and data analysts make the big bucks, is because this is hard stuff and not very many people can do it. So don't get discouraged. I'm not a coach. I feel like this isn't a very good pump up talk, but keep with it. So these next couple things, I have slides to walk through, but I think it works better if I just demonstrate in Tableau. Are you guys, maybe someone reassure me, should we do PowerPoint or Tableau?
Which one do you use?
No death by PowerPoint.
What was that?
I was just saying no death by PowerPoint.
No death by PowerPoint. Okay, we'll do some live demos in Tableau then. So up until this point, share screen, window, Tableau public. Everything that we've learned in Tableau by default, everything that it does is it aggregates by row. It aggregates by our measures, right? Here we have the sum of sales by the order number. Here we have this aggregate by month. Here we have, again, an aggregate by month. Here we have the average by these shipping modes. Here we have, we're grouping by shipping mode, which is the color. We're grouping by month. So that's the very, very logical way to group and aggregate things. And that is called level of detail. So we're saying the level we want to aggregate by, in this case, is month and ship mode. So that's the level that is aggregating. Here we're saying the level that we want to aggregate by. Here we actually have month, we have order number. Here we have month. So that's the level. So by default, whatever we drag onto our rows and columns, that's what we aggregate by. However, Tableau allows you, through the use of level of detail calculations, to be a little bit more sophisticated than Tableau and to show stuff in a slightly different format or on a slightly different level. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to pull in category and subcategory. And then let's just stick with our sales that we typically use. Let's change it to a table just to make things a little easier to read. So here we're doing the sum of sales by category and subcategory. However, say we wanted to know what percentage of our total furniture sales does bookcases make up. So if we get rid of subcategory, now the level that we're calculating by is just category. So we know in furniture, and let's make things really, really simple. Let's toss category on our filters, and let's just show furniture. So in furniture, our total sales is 742,000. If we bring subcategory in, so we're changing the level of aggregation. Now we're aggregating by subcategory. We're showing 142, 328, 91,000, 206,000. So all three of these things, we hover over them, add up to 742,000. So say we wanted to show that 742,000 when we're aggregating on the level of furniture, while we're also showing subcategory. You can see just as I'm clicking back and forth here, by default in Tableau, that's impossible to do. We have to show the sum of sales by whatever we're aggregating by. Unless you guys are Tableau wizards and you know how to do a level of detail calculation. So just like a normal calculated field, we're going to go and click into the arrow key here, and we're going to create calculated field. Now the magic word, we're going to call this LOD category sales. The magic word that you're going to use for 100% of your level of detail calculations. That's the nice thing about LOD calcs is you don't have to learn a million different things. You really just have to learn one. We're going to type in fixed and hit tab over. And you see automatically it gives us this little curly parentheses fixed. And we just want to type what we want to fix our calculation by. So we are trying to show the sum of sales for our furniture category here. We don't want it to start to break down when we bring in the subcategory. So we're going to fix it at the level of category. So this is just saying basically ignore everything that we have on our sheet. Ignore the subcategory. If we brought in region, if we brought in product name, it doesn't matter what we're showing on our sheet. Fix it just a category. And then you give a colon and you tell it what you want to fix. So we want to fix the sum of sales. All it's saying, fix by category, show the sum of sales, and then you just end it with a curly bracket. So if you don't really understand what it's doing, this may just kind of look like gibberish, but hopefully we kind of walked through it there where you understand what it's showing. And it'll make sense once I drag it onto our field. So hit OK. You can see we have this new measure over here. Let's go ahead and bring that on text. And let's show it this way. So now we have our sales just like we had before, but now on every single row, we're showing that 742,000 number. So remember, if we got rid of subcategory, we have this sum of sales. So when it's on the level of furniture, this works fine. When we bring in subcategory though, now it's aggregating on the level of the subcategory, and that's where we show all these different numbers. However, we fixed it, right, with our level of detail calculation, where we show fixed by category, show the sum of sales. So we could actually bring something else in too. Let's bring in product name, add them all. So now for just our sum of sales, it's showing on for every single product, for every single subcategory, for every single category, the sum of sales. However, our level of detail calc is completely ignoring all that and just showing across the category, show the sum of sales. So when we go down to our next category, let's get rid of our filter. You can see when you get down to office supplies, it changes from 742 to 719 because we're only fixing it across categories. So when category changes, our calculation changes. So hopefully that makes sense, but you may be wondering, why does that matter? Why would I ever want to show 742 4 different times? Well, the thing is, you probably wouldn't want to show it 4 different times. You wouldn't ever build a chart that just looks like this. But now we can start comparing these numbers side by side. So let's create another calculated field. And I promise I'll pause and walk through all this again. So create here, create calculated field. Let's call this percent of category sales. So we have this level of detail calculation that we're showing here, and we have the sum of sales by our different subcategories. So let's just pull in, right? We're showing sum of sales. Let's just pull in sum of sales, which is what we're already showing this column. And let's divide that by our LOD category sales. Now see, I got this ugly little error thing. It says it cannot mix aggregate and non-aggregate arguments with this function. So the reason that it's showing this is I'm showing sum of sales, and it's wanting me to say something like sum of this, that doesn't really make sense. We don't want to sum all these up against on our different rows. So we're just going to type in ATTR. And what that means is it's an attribute. So you want to treat this, an attribute's kind of like the same thing as a dimension. So you want to treat this just like a value in our data set as an attribute. So now that got rid of our calculate or our error. We hit OK. Now we can drag this over. We run into that same issue that we ran into before, but you guys know how to fix that now. Default properties, number format, percentage. So now that it's saying this bookcases, which makes up 114,000, is 15% of our sales for our furniture category. And we're able to do that because we have this fixed level of detail calculation now. So if you look and we add all 3 or all 4 of these up, you can see that it sums up to sum of measure 1. So 100%. Same thing down here. If we were to add all these up, oops, that's annoying. This now adds up to sum of measure values 1. So now we can get rid of this because we don't want to show it. And now we can see that bookcases make up 15% of our sales. So at a real high level, does that make sense? I'm going to walk through exactly how to do that again. But do you at least understand the concept or like what we're trying to accomplish here?
Yes.
Yeah, I like it because what I would also do then is put my profit margin and then
Yeah.
figure out what to cut
Yeah.
or what to add, right? What to sell.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you can compare that across different things and yeah, you could bring your profit margin in. You could do the same thing. You could see what your profit margin is across the category of furniture and then see what your profit margins are for each individual thing and see which one's above or below the entire thing. So yeah, that's a great use case. Okay, I know that was a lot, so let's walk through from scratch again. And let's use, let's maybe bring in something a little different. Let's bring in region and category. And then just to be, just to keep things completely different, let's bring in our profit. Okay. So we're going to walk through exactly what we did, just with some different data points to kind of hammer it home. So in each region, we have our 3 different categories. We can see our profit for each category, but we want to know what percentage of our total profit does each one of these make up. So we're going to create a calculated field, and we'll call this LOD by region. What are we doing? Profit. So again, magic word fixed. Tab over, it formats it really nicely for you. We're trying to fix this by region. We want to see our total profit for each region. So we'll type in region. And then our colon. And what's the aggregation that we want to fix for our region? And you can get really fancy with this. We're showing sum right now. You can pull in averages. You can pull in medians. You can pull in count, whatever you want. But we're going to just pull in sum, right? We're showing sum of profit. We want to pull in sum of profit. And then again, you have to close your little curly bracket. So we'll put one of those at the end. Now, if we drag that over, and a little messed everything up. Okay, so by region, by category, here's our individual profits. And let's double check here. Let's add all 3 of these up. If we add all 3 up and hover over, you can see the sum of measure value is 39,706. And we can see 39,706 is what we're showing for each one of these. And then let's go ahead and do,
You put profit in the parentheses next to sum, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
What I've been showing you guys to create calculated fields, I clicked this arrow up here, create calculated field. I'm going to show you a little cheat if you want to skip a step. you can, if you know you're going to use one of your columns in your calculated field, like right now, I'm going to use that LOD we just created, profit by region. I know I'm going to use that in my calculated field. If I click this button, then click, there's again another create calculated field, and it will just populate that from the start. But again, if you don't want to get complicated, you can always just start here. So we're going to do just like we did before, percent of region sales to sum of profit divided by attribute now, LOD profit by region. So that's what we just created. And let's pull that over here. And once again, we're going to have to change that default properties to a percentage. So let's validate it. All three of those add up to 1. All three of these add up to 1. So it's interesting. Maybe let's get rid of profit and the LOD, so we're just showing the percent. And then maybe we want to make this a little highlight table like we talked about last time. I like to do here. So it's interesting. We could see in the central, they're getting hammered by furniture sales, doing really, really well. A large majority there's tech sales. In the west, they're doing kind of even across the board. So you can start mixing some of the things that we've learned about. I will bring this back here. If anyone needs me to show the formula again or walk through any of that, let me know. But let's see if we can all kind of reproduce what I'm showing here.
Yeah, if you could just show the formula, but I have the profit by region, but if you could just show the other one more time, please.
Yep. So once we create the profit by region, so this is the one you have, then we're just going to do percent of region sales. So all we're doing is we're dividing the sum of profit, which we already are showing here in that first column, sum of profit, divided by, the only tricky part is you have to remember that this is we're no longer trying to aggregate this. We're treating this as a dimension or an attribute. So you got to add that ATTR. So we're just dividing this by this to get this percent, and then drag that right over here. And then you got to remember to change it to a percentage. All right. Anyone running into any issues? Anyone get it already?
Mine's finished.
Nice. Very, very cool. Anyone else?
Still going.
Okay, let me know if you run into any snags. All right. Anyone close? That just needs a little bit of help. Otherwise, I want to move on to the very, very last one for the night.
I'm close. Can you just go back to the screen one more time? So I can
Yes.
compare it.
Did you get it?
Yes, I have it. Thank you.
Cool. All right. And I'm just going to reassure you guys one more time. Level of detail calculations are like, if you ever get lucky enough to go to Tableau conference, which is actually in Vegas as well, there will be like 50,000 sessions on level of detail calculations. They're really, really hard, heady stuff. I'll give you guys a teaser for next week. Tableau has a way to do a lot of these things without having to type out the calculation. So it's going to be like classic, like back in college where they show you how to do stuff the hard way and then teach you there's an easier way. There will be an easier way that I'll show you guys next week, but you have to understand what's going on at the back end. So the very, very last one here that I want to show you guys is called a window calculation. So window calculations are really, really easy or really, really useful for when you're working with like dates and things like that. So instead of talking about it, I'm just going to show you guys. So we're going to bring in order date under our rows. And you know what? To keep things simple, we'll just keep it just like years. We'll keep it in years. And then we'll bring in sales. And we get our ugly little line chart. So by year, here's how many sales we have. Now, I'd say at 99% of the time, people want to know, okay, we finished with 733,000 in 2020. How did that compare to last year? Are we up year over year? If we were showing in month, we could say, are we up month over month? So we want to, just like level of detail calculations, we have things on a row basis right now. So we're able to see the sum of our 2020 sales or 733,000. And we want to compare that to 609. However, 609,000 is on the row above it. So we know that we can compare stuff row by row. So we need to somehow get 609,000 down to this row so that we can compare it. So just like when we did our level of detail thing, we had 114,000, but we needed to compare that to the 742, which is no longer on the same row. So we created level of detail. That was just changing the level of detail at which we compared things. In window functions, it changes the window in which you compare things. So here we're looking at 2020. We want to compare that to 2019. So the window above it, window below it. So to do that, we are going to create a calculated field, and we'll call this last year's sales. So just like for level of detail, the code word was fixed. Here the code word is going to be lookup, which in this case actually makes a ton of sense. We want to look up at the previous one, or we want to look up what the value was last time. So the first thing that we want to put in is the expression. So that's just, what are we trying to look up? We want to know, we want the sum of sales. So we're going to type in sum sales. And then the offset is just how far back you want to go. So if I typed in -1, it will pull the previous value. And the value is the sum of sales. If I typed in -2, it would pull 2 numbers up. But we just want last year's sales. So we're going to type in -1, hit enter. Say this calculation is valid. We're going to hit OK. Now, if we bring last year's sales over here, go back to our table. Now, the very first one is blank because there's nothing above it, right? So that makes sense. But then you can see in 2018, we had 470,000 sales. Last year, right? So it's pulling using our lookup function. It looked up what last year's was, and now it's on the same row as this year's sales. So we defied the logic of Tableau, trying to group everything by the year, and we're grouping everything by the previous year. So we brought that down. 2019, we had 609,000. We saw last year we had 470. 2020, we had 733,000. Last year we had 609. So now, if we wanted to do, let's see, last year's sales, we're going to create a calculated field off of that, and we'll call this year-over-year increase. Let's just do sum of sales minus last year's sales. So this will give us how much up or down we've gone from last year. So in 2018, it's saying we were $13,000 less than 2017. Well, let's check that. 470,000, 484,000. We can see 484,000, but we had last year. So we did go down $13,000 in 2018. However, we had a huge 2019, right? $609,000. Last year we had 470. We just look up to get that there. The difference between those two is that we went up $138,000. And then 2020, same thing, 733. Use a lookup function. So we got last year's 609, and we were able to bring in $124,000. Does that make sense from a, like I said, from a high level standpoint?
Concepts are making a lot of sense. It's the just again kind of just going back and making sure I get the steps correct. I'm already running into just remembering the steps, but no, the concepts make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So the hard step in this this example here is with our what do we call it, last year's sales. So this is the fancy window function, right? Using our magic lookup keyword here. So if we can get this formula right and create this last year's sales, then the year-over-year increase calculation is one that we've done. This was actually like the very first example that we did, where we had the sum of sales, which is what we're showing here, and we're subtracting last year's sales, which is the one that we just created. So I will show the lookup one on my screen, since I think that's the hard part. I'll give you guys a couple minutes here.
Okay, I have the last year sales equation. So I will take the last year sales and then subtract it by
Yep.
sum
So
of
we
sales minus sum of sales. Okay.
yep.
Okay.
And maybe something else to call out here, because we didn't type ATTR here, right? We didn't get that weird error. Let's look at why. If we look at our last year's sales calculations, we can see that we are already, the function that we are doing here is the sum of sales. So we're already aggregating sales by what it was last year. So if in our year over year increase, we tried to say sum of sales minus sum of last year's sales, it will give us an error and it will say, I don't know if you guys can see that pop up or not, but it says argument to sum, an aggregate function, is already an aggregation and cannot be further aggregated. So this last year's sales in this formula, right? We're already saying that that is the sum of sales. So in the year over year increase, we're saying sum of sales, which is just our normal level of detail, minus our function that we just created, which is the sum of last year's sales. So even though it doesn't show it in this formula, it is already aggregating it in our last formula.
Okay, so I have it entered in, but for the year, for the YOY increase in last year's sales is blank. So maybe I didn't enter it in correctly.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah. 1 second.
Yeah, let me take a look. Gotcha. Okay, open up your last year sales. If you go over to the left and hit edit. Okay, that looks right. Yeah. Maybe hover over yeah, those both look right. Hover over in your table where it showed, like where it should show year over year increase. Does it give you any? That's blank. I'll go down one. Okay, hover over the column to the right, last year's sales. Let me see here, that's odd. Go ahead and open up, let's drag last year's sales off of your measure value. Yeah, right in there. And then let's drag year over year increase off of there as well. So we have year of the order date, which is right. And you have all the same values as me. And then let's bring last year's sales back over there. Just drag it onto text. Okay, so there's the values. And then let's bring year over year increase back onto text too. So those are the same values. Okay, then let's go to show me and click that table in the top left. And then just hit the swap button to switch the columns and the rows. Huh, that was weird. So it's all there. You didn't have anything wrong. I think that's just a classic case of turn it off and back on again.
Yeah, that's super weird. I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else running into any issues there? Can you guys give me a quick shout when you get it? All right. Anyone super close and just need a quick question, or am I good to kind of finish things out here?
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. Yeah. So the rest that we have here is basically just the assignment and questions. I'm not going to share my screen because it's pretty easy. But what I want you guys to do for this week, because I understand that this was pretty complicated stuff, is instead of using using a new data set and introducing some new dimensions and measures, we don't know if they're clean or not, go ahead and just continue to use the sample or the Superstore data. All that I ask is just and I'll list all the things out. Do everything that we learned about tonight using something slightly different. So if we aggregated profit earlier, literally you can just change it to quantity, reproduce the same things, and come up with a different calculated field. If we grouped by region earlier, maybe you group by like product or something. But I'll list out everything that we covered tonight. And for Monday, so we have a nice long break before our next class, just go in, reproduce the steps, just get some extra repetitions in, calculating this stuff, and then publish the Tableau Public, and we'll walk in for kind of our storytelling next time. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me tonight. I know that was a lot. And I promise next week we'll get back into building really, really cool chart types and kind of the fun part of data viz. But I promise that understanding kind of the inner workings and how the data functions in the back end will set you up in the long run. I also promise that if you go up to like anybody that's ever used Tableau before, and you say, man, level of detail calculations, am I right? They'll instantly give you a big sigh and share your empathy and how hard those are. So appreciate it. I will stay on for another like 15 minutes or so until 9 o'clock. If you guys do want to walk through some specific examples or go over everything, otherwise have a fantastic night. And I will be back in Omaha on Monday. So if you guys are in Omaha, we will meet back up at the Connect building at 75 North. So excited to see some of you back in person again.
Thank you, Charlie. Have fun.
Appreciate that.
Win big.
I'll try. My goal is just not to lose.
All right, there you go.
Thank y'all. Have a good night.
See
Yep,
you.
have a good night, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.